All right, everybody, what is going on? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well on this Thursday, and we've got some more updates from the Seattle Seahawks and their minicamp. Although I'll go ahead and say this right now, there aren't going to be as many as some people may have expected or hoped for, because yesterday ended up being a shortened day of minicamp. The Seahawks had a truncated minicamp day, and what they did do was a walkthrough. This video is sponsored by Prize Picks, and there wasn't a lot of on-field stuff to really talk about. We've got some comments from Mike Macdonald. We've got some comments from observers, but overall, today was a relatively shortened day of minicamp work. So we're not going to quite have the same amount of substance in terms of this guy is doing this guy is doing that. Apparently today should be a normal day. So we'll see what happens today, and I'll make a video about that probably tomorrow morning. But let's go through what we do have about today. A lot of the more interesting stuff today did happen off the VMAC field, because when it's a walkthrough, there's only so much that you can really say. But one thing that did happen is we got the training camp schedule, which I know is going to be very interesting to some people. And here it is, the 10 days where, as a fan, as a member of the public, you can attend training camp and actually watch it. So we've got July 25th being the first day, and I believe that is the first day of training camp period. And then 26th, 28th, 31st, August 1st, August 4th, August 5th, the 7th, the 8th, which is also Football Fest, which is, I believe, the mock game. So that should be the week, I believe, the week before our first preseason game, so it makes sense. And then Kids Day, August 3rd, or 13th, excuse me. So spread out a little bit here at the end, a lot of it bunched together in that first bunch, and then the second bunch is spread out a little bit more, but that is what we're looking at for camp. Obviously, that's not every day of training camp, but these are the days where you can actually go watch it in person. But yeah, that is what we're looking at right now. So we are assuming nothing happens between now and training camp. You can see that it's going to be a while before anything really happens. That is 6 weeks away from today. So cherish the information we get right now. Hopefully we get information later today. Hold on to that stuff, because it's going to be about all we get for quite some time. I don't think anything happens at the VMAC between now and training camp. Could be wrong. We'll see. But yeah. All right. So talking about some of the things that we learned. This is from yesterday more so than, or this is more from 2 days ago. And it's just kind of a general thing. This is from the OTAs more than minicamp even. But talking about the running backs a little bit here. This is one of the more interesting things we've gotten so far. As of right now, it looks like Helani is the top running back, with Price being behind him. I suspect that will change by the time we get to the season, if for no other reason than Price is going to be the early down back, and I think Helani will be the late down back. But I do expect that Price will end up getting more snaps than Helani this year. As of right now, though, it looks like Price is second string behind Helani. Helani's veteran experience in this offense is doing some heavy lifting here. Although there is good news with Price. I want to be clear about that. The news is mostly good. He's been getting full drives with the starters, including passing downs. If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the Prize Picks app, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball, we got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like, Prize Picks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. That is one thing that I think is really good to take away from what is going on at the VMAC right now. Price has been better as a receiving back than you would have expected based on his stats in college, which is something that we've talked about. The possibility that Price didn't catch the ball at Notre Dame mostly because of the presence of Jeremiah Love and not because he's bad at it. And so far, it looks like that may be the case. Now, I don't know about his blocking. I think his blocking may continue to be a problem, and that may be something we have to work through. But as far as catching the ball goes, it looks like at the very least he can do it. Now, I still expect, as this tweet mentions from the Tacoma News Tribune, Kalani's going to be used in passing situations until Charbonnet gets back. That is where he's best off as a third down back. All right, so that is that part of the news from yesterday. Here's Corbin talking about what went on yesterday in general. Again, like I said, walkthrough, and they had basically finished up a little bit after noon. Mike Macdonald addressed the media at 12:45. We did get a little bit from that. The reason why they decided to cut things short was because the Seahawks wanted to do some community projects in the afternoon. Like I said earlier, they're expected to do a regular minicamp practice tomorrow, but makes sense, right? They don't need to be doing every single bit of work in the offseason after a season where they won the Super Bowl, and they didn't cut their OTA short. Remember, they probably intended on cutting their OTA short, but they didn't, probably because of Hard Knocks, if I had to guess. Some people have theorized that. So they are taking some opportunities to shorten up the off-season work a little bit. Now, one of the more interesting things from yesterday's Mike Macdonald presser, this is the thing that probably caught the most attention. Mike Macdonald was asked about signing Bobby Hart. He said, we need a third tackle. Josh Jones is just not ready to practice yet. He needs to become ready to practice. That's his responsibility. Also mentioned that they're in competition and Bobby is practicing and Josh is not. So that sounds like he's trying to put Josh Jones on notice a little bit, if you get what I mean. That doesn't sound like, oh, he's injured. That doesn't sound like, oh, well, he's working through some physically painful things and he's just not quite ready in the same way that Charbonnet isn't ready or Torrey Horton isn't ready. That sounds like he's out of shape. That's what this says to me here. When he says that that's his responsibility, I take that to mean he didn't show up to training camp in good shape. Apparently, Amari Kite was also in that boat based on some other things I've heard, and Macdonald is expressing some disappointment here. So this is one part of the offseason that sometimes you don't hear a lot about, but under Macdonald so far, it's come up a little bit more than it did under Carroll, it feels like. I remember that in previous years, that's been one of the things that Bradford has had a problem with, and so far, apparently this year, he's shown up in much better shape. So feels like there's something going on with Josh Jones. His contract did give him $3 million guaranteed, so I don't know how much trouble he's in, but it sounds like he's got to get it going, and we need him because he was an important part of this team last year. All right, so moving beyond that little, I'd call it troubling, because if Josh Jones is not ready for us when the season starts, that leaves us at a very, very precarious situation at tackle. We also got this from Torrey Horton, or about Torrey Horton. He will not be out there tomorrow. He will not be practicing this minicamp. There was some talk that maybe he could, but he should be there early, if not right at the beginning of camp, which is good news, and that should allow him to get onto the field in time for the start of the season. The good news is he's not a rookie, so it's not like he needed the whole offseason, but he only played about half the year last year, so it sure would have been nice if he could have done more this offseason, but they expect him to be ready to go when they start training camp, more or less, so that's very encouraging. We also had some vagueness on Charbonnet. potentially being ready for week 1. He is very much playing things close to the vest here. He just said anything's possible. I would be very surprised if Charbonnet's ready for week 1, but it's more possible now than it was before. And like I've said before, you don't necessarily want your football team to be an open book about injury stuff if they don't have to be. So Mike Macdonald being vague about injury things is not unexpected. And I'd even go so far as to call it a good thing, or at least a reasonable thing. And back to the Horton thing real quick. One thing McDonald did say, according to Brady Henderson here, is that the Horton stuff is still all positive. They're still thinking that he's on track to be able to play week 1. They still think he's going to be back in time, and they don't view him not being in minicamp as an obstacle or an issue right now. So I wouldn't worry about it right now. If he's not there at the start of training camp, that's when it might be time to worry a little bit. And also, one other cool note, like I said, there's going to be another minicamp session today. But another thing that's going to happen later tonight is they're going to get their Super Bowl rings. That's going to be one of the fun events of the evening. So keep an eye out on that. Should be cool to see the team get their rings. And that is really about it in terms of training camp stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. I do plan on doing at least one more video later today, though, because there's another thing kind of off the topic of training camp stuff that I want to get into, but I don't want to put it in this video. All right. So everybody have a good rest of your day. Go Hawks. I know it wasn't a ton of info today, but the Josh Jones stuff is notable. It feels like there's something going on there. And the injury stuff is still welcome. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Everyone have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later today.